Welcome to UCF Knightline, your source for UCF sports and former player information. Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Phegley coming to you from the 1148 studios. This is episode number 25, a milestone. And joining me in studio is
Trylko on a night in which there's a lot of breaking UCF news.
Wow, yeah, unfortunately we're not the ones to break it, but the news has definitely broken. All right, first of all, I'm going to give you a little bit of a rundown what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the breaking news, obviously. We're also going to have Brandon on the second part of the interview that we started last week. We're going to have John Swift on talking about defensive backs and what to expect for next year with that. We also have a very special guest by phone, Quincy McDuffie, and he'll be on a little bit later on. We have basketball to talk about, some action that went on today, and we have women's flag football. We have a women's flag football team?
In the midst of all of those things, yes, we do have a women's flag.
And they are national champions.
Back-to-back.
Back-to-back national champions, even better. All right, so with the breaking news kind of a thing, not broken by us, but there's two things that we got to talk about tonight. Some of you have heard about them, maybe not all of you. Brashad Perryman has decided that he will forego his senior season and go to the NFL. And also, the other news is coaching changes are all over the place for the UCF Knights. Charlie Taff has decided that he's going to retire. Brent Key will take over at offensive coordinator. And we've got new names on the defensive side as well, and we will start talking about that, I guess. The news for Perryman was broken by Shannon Owens-Green of the Orlando Sentinel about an hour ago. It is 9-something here, and so all this is kind of new, of course, but hey, that's what's fun about it. So coaching, Charlie Taff says he's going to retire. Brent Key is going to take over as the offensive coordinator. Key had been in the booth a little bit in this last season, for the last half of the season probably, and he's been up there, so I guess that was his experience as an offensive coordinator.
This change has been rumored for a couple of weeks now, but I think it is the 1-2 punch of losing the defensive coordinator a week ago, now the offensive coordinator. There are a lot of changes going on in this program at this time. And what time is it? Recruiting season. A lot of upheaval for UCF, but that's to be expected when the program has risen in prominence and the way in which it has, the success that it has had. Our coaches are going to be wanted by other programs. And you've got to thank, I would say our fans have to thank Charlie Taff for the job he's done. The offense has had some bumps in the road this past season, but this has been a better team offensively with Charlie Taff in the coaching booth.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. It has definitely been a better team with him here. Now, I'm bummed that he's leaving, that he's been a heck of a coach up there. He gave definitely some credibility. He's been around for a long time, and that's why he's retiring and everything else. Back to Brent Key. He has not ever held the position that I'm aware of as an offensive coordinator, and that kind of scares me. I have heard reports that this offense is going to be very similar to what it was with Charlie Taff, of course, but it's going to be a little bit more simple for the new wide receivers that are going to be coming in.
I think that's going to be out of necessity. I mean, you're replacing, we were talking about Brashad Perryman, J.J. Wharton we've talked about in the last couple of weeks. Seemingly lost in that is the loss of Rennell Hall as well. So you have a lot to replace there. But, Brent Key has been this coach in waiting for a while, and he's been here 10 years. Critics will say that the last 6 as the offensive line coach, we didn't exactly light things up in the running game last year, and we had a lot of changes on the offensive line. So he comes into this new position. There will be some detractors that say, what have you done for me lately?
And he's also going to take on coaching the running backs, so that could be interesting. On the defensive side, Chuck Bresnahan is taking over at the defensive coordinator job, and he has been at USF for the last couple of years, and he will also coach linebackers as well.
Get my arms around the fact that he was a Bull a short period of time ago.
I don't like it.
He changed his clothes. I guess I have to embrace him now. I think back on something that Brandon Hellwig of UCFsports.com said last week, that perhaps George O'Leary had run out of people that he had worked with to replace some of the openings on the coaching staff. And then you look into Chuck Bresnahan's bio and you find out that he was an assistant at Georgia Tech from 1988 to 1991. So perhaps there are a couple of people left in the George O'Leary circle of friends, but that's what happens when you coach 40-plus years. You're going to know some folks along the way.
Speaking of knowing folks along the way, there are a couple familiar names that are going to come back onto this team as coaches. Andrew Thacker, who was a former graduate assistant at UCF, was hired to coach the safeties earlier this week. And Travis Fisher, a former Knights cornerback, will coach the defensive backs. He was in the NFL, and now he's come back as a coach. That's kind of cool for former players to go to the NFL and come back as a coach. I think that's good that that's happening for the Knights.
Yeah, it is. And, as we've been talking about Knights in the NFL and 18 players that have played in the NFL this past season, that will happen, right? As the program continues to grow and establish tradition, you're going to see these guys come back. And Fisher's a name that a lot of UCF fans know from the pre-George O'Leary days, drafted by the St. Louis Rams in the second round during the 2002 NFL draft, played 5 seasons in the NFL. It'll be nice to have him back in the black and gold on the sideline.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit more about this later. We're going to go through this in the coming weeks. This is all kind of new, and we've got to kind of find out what we can find out about it, and get some more information. But we will definitely talk about this in the coming weeks and break it down a lot farther and who these guys are.
And, these are a lot of things that are happening at a very busy time of year with signing day coming up. This is a lot of upheaval and a lot of change for UCF, so we still have to digest what all of these moves mean, the impact, what it means for the wide receivers to not have Brashad Perryman back. Already you're mentioning that a more simplified offense may result. What does that mean for Justin Holman as he begins to show improvement during the season? Now to have his wide receivers depleted, a lot of change, and that's why now it's good to have the Knightline Podcast, a weekly place to react to that and talk about it in a forum that didn't exist before.
Absolutely. Also, speaking of Justin Holman, Brent Key coming in and saying that it was going to be a little bit simplified, that could be good for everybody because it's not going to be a completely different system. It will actually be, I'm sure that Brent Key has been taught by Charlie Taff the entire way. It's not going to be that much different. It may be better. It may just be fine.
It may just be.
It may just be. Yeah. All right. So before we get too far involved in all that stuff that's in the future, we still have Brandon's second part of the interview from last week that we were talking about the past and this past season. And we're going to go back to that right now. So here we go. All right. So the most important returning player on defense, Brandon.
I'll go with Jacoby Glenn. That is, if he is returning, it sounds like he is. I know there were some whispers that he was draft eligible, being in his third year out of high school. That it was possible, but I already didn't even put in for an evaluation. I don't think he would have been a top 2 round projection anyway. But if he is coming back, he's the only returning player in the UCF secondary. So that's a real big question mark. But it's good that your best player in the secondary is the one coming back. He's been the American Conference Co-Defensive Player of the Year and Associated Press Second Team All-American this year. Opposing teams don't want to throw to his side, so having that kind of player returning is really going to be huge because obviously UCF's going to be breaking in some younger guys. Could be guys that didn't even play this year. Remains to be seen what will happen at those other positions, but it's very feasible. You could see guys like Kyle Gibson and Chris Williams, guys who were on the scout team this past year, start at some other secondary positions. So having him, being the experienced guy returning is going to be huge for that unit.
With him being the quote-unquote leader, though, not being the middle linebacker, calling the plays and stuff, but still having his leadership and everybody knowing who he is and what he is and what he is capable of, be able to take some of those, younger guys under his wing and set the bar pretty high and be able to lead in that fashion. I think he has the opportunity to be first-team All-American this year, and I hope that that's what happens. Trace, what's your opinion on this?
It's hard not to argue the importance of Jacoby Glenn, but I'm going to go off the board a little bit and name defensive end Thomas Niles. 6.5 sacks. So I think we're going to see that the team is tested in the secondary, so that pass rush is going to be even more important to us. So he's who I'd say is key for us next season.
Who is going to be the biggest loss that we're going to have on defense, Brandon?
There's two in particular that come to mind, and I'm probably the same two that Trace Way has as well. I'm thinking of Terrence Plummer and Clayton Geathers. Actually, I think I'll go with Clayton Geathers. Terrence Plummer's been the leader on defense, and such a key part of the defense, really since his freshman year. But Clayton Geathers was kind of unsung there in the playing safety, and just kind of showed up and went to work. I know he didn't have the interceptions and those kind of numbers like Jacoby did, but really was a solid player defensively, taking over that role after Kamal Ishmael graduated. So, I don't know. It's those are, when you look at I think UCF might have some linebacker talent. I know they've been high on a guy, Dimitri Brim, transfer from Virginia, maybe to kind of take over that middle linebacker role. But frankly, I'm not sure who's going to be there to fill Clayton Geathers' shoes, so that's why I think he might be the biggest defensive loss.
I'm going to say Terrence Plummer for me, being the guy that is going to be a huge loss to us just because of his leadership and the role that he had taken there. And he's another guy kind of like Wharton, where I was talking about him playing with everything he had on every down. Trace?
Obviously, those two are the key ones. I think the one that will drive me the most crazy and missing is Jordan Ozerites. That kid could make a play or drive you insane. So I don't know if it's the biggest loss, but I'm going to miss watching the kid play.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, Jordan did some amazing things, and then at other times, like you're saying, was the person that it kind of hurt you to watch him play sometimes. So I got another question here. What are we going to do in the kicking game? How much are we going to miss Sean Moffitt? I mean, that's a huge person to miss at this point. A kicker. A solid kicking game that we've had for years.
Sean Moffitt, he kind of got in the news a little bit for the wrong reasons late in the year when he was suspended for, I think it was a game and a half. He had a good time, I guess, coming back after that UConn game, as far as, maybe a little bit too much drinking. But when you look at his stats, I mean, he really would have to be up there as one of the greatest kickers in UCF history. The all-time leading points scorer in terms of overall points scored for UCF, overall field goal leader, most field goals made. So yeah, when you go look at the great kickers, I don't know if there's been a lot of them. I know Matt Prater might have the biggest name, but I think when you look at his career, as unfortunate as it is, he's going to be remembered for missing the extra point that would have continued the Hawaii Bowl into another overtime. So, there hasn't been a lot of great kickers. I know there was some before my time, Eddie O'Brien, Franco Grillis, and players that were in the lower division days. But I think you can make an argument that Sean Moffitt has been the greatest kicker in UCF's young history. As far as who's going to replace him, that's a good question. I think the leader in the way everyone is expecting is a guy named Matt Wright, who redshirted this past year. I believe he's from Pennsylvania. He came in as a preferred walk-on. Frankly, I don't know much about him. I really don't remember a whole lot about him in preseason camp. It seemed like between Moffitt and Galvin and Rodrigo were the top three kickers. They were the ones that kind of remember the most as far as getting the reps and the field goal kicks. But that's kind of the guy that they're looking at to potentially take over, that job. I know Rodrigo is trying to see if he's eligible for his sixth year. I'm not sure if that'll happen or not, or if that's even possible. I know he broke his leg one of these seasons and didn't play the rest of the year, so I think that's what they're aiming towards. So right now it's a guy named Matt Wright, and it'll be a very interesting, like many of them will be, a very interesting position battle come spring football.
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's going to be a huge loss. We've had such consistency most of the time with him. I think that's going to be a big loss.
And that's a position where a lot of our fans won't be talking about it, but games will be won and games will be lost in that position. And we've seen that, especially in the college game, that you need a strong kicker. Look at Florida State, what they were able to do throughout the year, having a strong kicker. We're going to miss Moffitt, and hopefully we get a good replacement for him.
All right, so I think the next question, just the next topic I think that we're going to take on here is maybe what's to come in the next year as far as our schedule goes. We know that we have the game against the Stanford, I live in Sanford, and this is the Stanford Cardinal. And then we have the South Carolina Gamecocks those two games are going to be our chance to be on the big stage playing Power 5 teams. And I don't know, Brandon, have you heard anything as far as getting another non-conference game that we're looking for?
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to figure that out pretty soon. Most schedules are going to be coming out here in the next couple of months. I expect it to be a lower-level FCS-type team. I know they were, hoping to maybe get, at least a team that could be a draw at home, a home game that would sell tickets, but there's not really anyone available, this late in the process. So but who's left? I mean, I think looking the other day at teams that have known vacancies, and there was a couple Sunbelt teams and maybe an FCS team, and I don't know if at that point it really matters who you end up scheduling. So I don't think there's going to be a splash type game, and frankly, I don't think you really want one. With the people you got to replace. I know Coach O'Leary's talking about reloading and not rebuilding. But there's big question marks where you already got two very challenging road games at South Carolina and Stanford, and frankly, you don't really need to challenge yourself beyond that with another game against a team of that caliber. So it's probably in UCF's best interest to schedule a winnable game for that fourth non-conference game. That would go along with a home game against FIU.
Yeah. Are there any teams that you're hearing that you think are more likely to be coming here?
Not particularly. If it's an FCS team, and frankly, it doesn't matter who it is. It's just whoever wants to sign up to play on a certain date. There was rumors of possibilities that I don't think are possibilities anymore. At one point, there was a rumor that Baylor, the rumor really started with SMU. Baylor is supposed to play at SMU next year, and SMU is trying to lighten up their schedule. They got a new coach, Chad Morris, and they've been struggling a lot, so it really doesn't do them any good to play Baylor. I know be a good home gate for them, but they're looking just for maybe some more winnable games in the non-conference schedule. So they were trying, Baylor, even though that game's not officially off the books, I think, if Baylor could find a better game. I think Baylor, on the other hand, was trying to find a game for better strength of schedule. Obviously, that affected them this year in terms of not making the playoff, also the addition of not playing a championship game in the Big 12. I'm not sure if UCF really, in all honesty, qualifies as an upgrade. When you talk about strength of schedule with teams that are hoping to compete for the playoff, they're talking, you're playing other Power 5 teams and this and that, and it's not like UCF's going to come in next year being a top 25 team. So I don't know if Baylor would have, but that was a rumor that maybe if that happened, maybe Baylor could get in the mix, but I don't think that's a possibility anymore.
Yeah, I'd like to see us definitely schedule somebody that we could, I don't know if an easy win, but somebody that could compete, but we could definitely score a win against. I think that would be important.
So why not Bethune-Cookman again? That was a good game, a good crowd.
It's fine with me. They did bring a crowd, yeah. and I don't have a problem with that because they're a local team, and we have a history with them, and I have no problem with that at all.
Yeah, they have a new coach. Brian Jenkins had been the coach. I'm kind of curious what's going on at Bethune-Cookman. He took a job at a rival Alabama State at pretty much the same pay. I think he was getting at Bethune-Cookman, so that was kind of an interesting move that he made. So I'm not even sure who they hired. But yeah, it'd be a new coach. But yeah, if they're going to sell tickets, whether it's Florida A&M or Bethune-Cookman, some team in state, if they're going to sell tickets, that's going to be better than any other team you could possibly hope to play. And they sold a good amount of tickets at that game last year. So I think you can't go wrong playing an in-state team.
Yeah, and playing, a team in a lower division is at least once, especially for a home opener, really isn't that bad of a deal because it's kind of like a preseason game in a way. I mean, it's kind of important. I think some guys got their feet under them in that game, even though we were 2 games into the season, but I think it helped at that point. All righty. Well, thank you very much, Brandon. I think that we're not going to take any more of your time today. Thank you so much for joining us again. We always love it when you're here. You are a mountain of information. I really appreciate what you do for UCF Sports and all the information that you provide.
Well, thank you very much for having me, guys. I always enjoy coming on and talking UCF with the Knightline Podcast, and I'll talk to you sometime soon.
All righty. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
What's interesting there is that Brandon, in an interview that we recorded a week ago, talking about one of the key returners would be Jacoby Glenn. And in the midst of all of these changes, coaches going, Brashad Perriman saying that he's going to go to the NFL draft, you don't know if even in the evening while we're recording this that we may not get word that Jacoby Glenn has left us. But what's interesting is that we do know that we have some depletions in the secondary, and you were able to have a conversation with John Swift, who has been analyzing that. What we do know is a loss at that position.
Right, yeah, I talked to him today, and this is a great time to play that interview. We are talking with John Swift this week. This is going to be a new feature on our show, and it's going to be called Crunching the Numbers. We're going to look at a different position group every week, and we're going to get John's opinion on that and see where we're at with all these different groups. All righty, what do you got for us this week? I think we're going to talk about defensive backs. Am I correct?
Yeah, so this week we're going to break down the defensive back group and the position breakdown. Position I played and loved, so I'm excited to talk about this
Me
group.
too. That was my position as well. So
yeah, so we still don't know the status on Jacoby Glenn, if he's going to leave for the NFL. I assume he'll be back, so we'll just go into that premise. Obviously, the AAC Co-Defensive Player of the Year was an All-American 2 years in a row now. Was a freshman All-American last year, and then his sophomore year made the second-team All-American list. Had 7 interceptions and 11 pass breakups, so just a great cover corner. He'll certainly be our top defensive player back if he comes back. So the other interesting thing is amongst the secondary, we're going to lose 3 other starters, Clayton Gethers, Jordan Ozaritis, and Brandon Alexander. The good thing, I think, is positive to UCF is that I think we're upgrading the talent and the raw athleticism with some of the guys that we've signed over the last couple of years. I also want to mention we lose Sean Beckton, who was an outstanding special teams player in a backup role for, I think, 5 years at UCF. There's obviously a great long-rangey, physical safety that we're losing. Ozaritis, he's kind of up and down. Had a great game against Baylor in the Fiesta Bowl, and then, kind of gave up a lot of deep balls, couldn't get his head around. And then Brandon Alexander, he came in he was a defensive end in high school, a walk-on, kind of a great story there. Played corner his freshman year, and then they moved him to safety. And, he did a pretty solid job in his career at UCF. Obviously, probably his highlight was that forced fumble on the goal line against Houston this year. So we got 3 vacancies and, kind of a group of a lot of young guys, ready to step in. Some of the guys that got some playing time this year at the safety position was Trylko Johnson, who will be a redshirt junior. He played in all 13 games this season. He came to UCF actually as a wide receiver from the Orlando area, switched to free safety. He was a 3-star recruit out of high school, had 3 Power 5 offers. A pretty big guy, physical. He played in some good moments there in the NC State bowl game, the Bitcoin Bowl. I think he'll be able to step right in for Clayton Gethers and really kind of take over that, physical, come up and fight the run, but also has the athleticism and speed to kind of get out there on deep balls. So I think that'll be a net positive, with a little bit of time. The other safety spot, Jared Henry's really the strong guy right now. He'll be a redshirt junior. He played in 10 games this season, 3 as a freshman. He had offers at high school from Maryland, South Carolina, and Vanderbilt. Was a 3-star himself. We haven't really seen a lot of him, kind of gave him in sparing minutes, but, a guy that, was recruited pretty highly in high school, kind of yet to be seen what he can do out on the field. Being a redshirt junior, he's been in the system, he knows the playbook, so excited to see what he can do out there. And then the kind of big competition is going to be at the other corner spot. We have a collection of guys who played in the nickel role this year. The first being Shaquille Griffin, who had an interception this year, started the season as nickel, and then also played 8 games as a true freshman. He's, at times struggled, especially on the deep ball. Kind of like Ozaritis, just didn't get his head around. You see flashes of great there, but, overall, I'd say it's kind of been a little bit of disappointment. He's highly recruited out of high school. He had, 4 Power 5 offers with a 3-star, kind of close to that 4-star range in a lot of the recruiting websites. So he's a guy that can compete for that corner position. DJ Killings is another guy who played in 8 games this year as nickel and kind of took over that starting role from Shaquille Griffin later in the season. He had 2 interceptions, and again, a guy out of the Jacksonville area. Had 4 Power 5 offers, was a 3-star guy himself. He'll be a junior this year. So those are a lot of guys with experience. We have a few other guys on the roster, the biggest being Kyle Gibson, a guy I'm really excited about. He redshirted this year. Probably the most highly recruited player in UCF history, that at least in the modern era. Yeah, he had offers from Michigan State, Vanderbilt, FSU, Mississippi State, Louisville, Mizzou, Ole Miss, Notre Dame, Wisconsin. I think in total he had 14 Power 5 offers, 5 from the SEC. was a 4-star, top 200 on Rivals and ESPN. Has great instincts and ball skills. He's a playmaker in high school. Tackles really well, too, which is important in the O'Leary scheme. He's projected as a corner, so he might be, competing for that other corner spot across from Jacoby Glenn on the boundary. He big-time games. He played in the state 6A championship as a senior against Miami Central. The team kind of got blown out, but he did have 2 interceptions in that game. Really a blue-chip player, and I think somebody that, Knight fans should be really excited to see what he can do. Obviously, he's been in the program a year, so he should know the playbook. He's gotten physically bigger. But, it's a different game from high school to college. It'd be interesting to see how he can adapt and if he can be that playmaker he was in high school at this level. Another guy on the list is Chris Williams, who was a late signee. He's actually had a verbal commitment to Alabama and then switched kind of last minute, came to UCF. Another guy, I'd say very close to being a blue chip player, highly recruited. And then the other corner spot that's still kind of a question mark is Mike Rogers, a guy who hasn't enrolled. I'm not anticipating him enrolling, but there's a chance, from my understanding, that he might in May. But another guy from Georgia, I think he was verbally committed to Georgia Tech and then came to UCF. But had a lot of SEC offers and just a really good playmaker. And then rounding out kind of the other safety that I haven't talked about is Trey Neal, who also redshirted this year. He'll be a true freshman coming next year. He's a good athlete. He's 6'2". He played wide receiver in high school. He was a 2-star, but had 3 Power 5 offers. Rangy guy. Like I said, he played both ways in high school. I think he could be a factor as well in the secondary, especially in a backup role.
Do you worry about Kyle Gibson's size at all? Being 5'11", 180 is what he's listed on right here. That's kind of a little bit smaller than Jacoby Glenn. And
I think, 5'11" still, as you know, I think Ozaritis was about 5'10". 5'11" as a corner, if you have the vertical ability, and I've seen some tape on him at high school and also on some sevens tournaments, and one of the little highlight clips I saw on him in the sevens tournament, he got up what looked like he has close to probably like a 40-inch vertical. So, as long as you have the range in your arms, which he does, and the vertical ability, our conference does have quite a few tall receivers. Memphis always seems to find guys that are 6'4" and 6'5", and Houston as well. So, as long as you can get up and defend that ball top, I think, it's not that big of a problem. The average size of a corner is probably about 5'11" or so. And he's a guy who plays a lot bigger than he is on paper. Just watching him in high school, he's a guy that just, would come up and make hits behind the line of scrimmage. Very physical. He played safety in high school, but is projected as a corner at the Division I level.
Do you think that we possibly could see Shaquem Griffin this year? He redshirted, so we never saw him. He's a good player as well. He does have a physical handicap, which is, a little bit different, but I've seen him in warm-ups and I've seen him in practice and stuff like that, and he actually can really play the game. Do you think that we'll...
Yeah, that's another guy in the mix at safety that, sorry, I forgot to mention. Yeah, a great athlete. Obviously, his twin brothers on the team. He, on his own right, had quite a few independent offers that came to UCF kind of as a quote-unquote package deal. But, yeah, he's a guy that, I think has a lot to prove. He's has a physical handicap to him, and, I watched some interviews with him as he's been recruited by UCF, and just seems like a great kid. Seems like a guy who, wants to compete at the Division I level and kind of prove people wrong that he can go out there and do that. Certainly this year, I think with the depth we had in the secondary, it just didn't make sense to try to get a guy like that in there. And so we redshirted most of the freshmen. But he's a guy I think that, could see the field next year, especially the lack of depth that we have in the secondary.
I'm excited about the group that we have coming in for sure. I am excited about Kyle Gibson, being a highly recruited guy. He needs to really show up for us, and I hope that he did that this year on that scout team. We will find out, I guess, if he gets a lot of time this year and if he is the guy, because he had to prove himself on that scout team, I'm sure, first. You know how O'Leary loves to run his scout team and make those guys what they are there first a lot of times before he brings them on to what he calls the show team.
Yeah, and he's a guy out of Tampa, Armwood High School, and he's originally committed to Vanderbilt, and then when Franklin left Vanderbilt to go to Penn State, he decided to come to UCF, so he kind of got him late in the process. And I, really can't emphasize him enough about how, unprecedented of a recruit he is for UCF. Now, that doesn't necessarily translate and mean anything yet, but certainly on paper, he shows a lot more than any other guy that we've gotten, in the George O'Leary era. That builds a lot of hype, and I think we'll see him out there. He had an interception in the spring game. I'm sure I haven't been at practices, but I'm sure he's been showing up. O'Leary praised him early on, I think, in the camp, but, bringing back a starter like Ozaritis Emeritus and obviously Jacoby Glenn on the other corner. Kind of hard to justify bringing a true freshman in there to play the position when you don't really need him. Otherwise, I think he would have been in the mix.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Now, back to the Griffin boys a little bit. If these guys are anything like their mom and dad, because I've talked to both of them, they tailgate in the same section that I do, and I've talked to both of them on a couple occasions. If they are anything like their parents, they are good kids. Their parents are awesome, and we will be talking to them more this year, hopefully, at tailgates and stuff like that. But if they're anything like them, they're going to be, great, solid players. So, because they're genuine people. So I appreciate that in people. So, and I think that goes a long way in an athlete as well, being a genuine person and going out there and playing with their heart. And I think we've seen these, or at least Shaquille, go out and do that, this year. We do have to replace a couple of people, like you said, that did go out there and play like that every time with, had everything into every play. Clayton Geathers for sure. Brandon Alexander, I think that he did that as well. Ozerite, I don't know. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with him. I love him when he does well, but sometimes he got caught quite a bit, not in the right position or looking the other way or, was burned quite a bit. I like him, but I'm not horribly sad to see him go. I think that we have better players in that position for next year, so I'm excited about that.
I think that, from a pure athleticism standpoint, we're upgrading in ball skills, instincts, and, I think those are really going to show up. But as you know, there's a lot to learn in the position. I wouldn't expect them to, match what this secondary did this year. But, this season will probably be a learning year. There'll probably be some ups, there'll be some downs. But I think once these guys get coached up, probably in the following year, they could really be something special.
Kind of starting to get a reputation of having good defense and good defensive backs, especially. These guys will have a chance to step up, and I think it'll be good.
Yeah, and as you know, having good defensive backs and good in coverage enables you to be a little more aggressive up front with what you're doing, stunning your defensive line, bringing blitzes, having confidence in your covering ability in the back is paramount to try to do that. And O'Leary, a couple of years back when Joe Burnett and his group was there in the secondary, was able to get really creative on the defensive front to really bring a lot of pressure, and guys like Bruce Miller certainly benefited from that. So it's, it works hand in hand, last line of defense. So hopefully they can show up and live up to their potential.
All righty. Thank you very much, John Swift. I think that's going to do it for today, and we will talk to you very, very soon.
Sounds good. Thanks. Charge on.
Well, what's interesting, Andrew, about the breakdown that John provided is Jacoby Glenn the last shoe to drop here amidst all of the changes. And how will Glenn fit in with some of the new faces under Chuck Bresnahan, the new defensive coordinator's guidance? And then you go back to that George O'Leary is a defensive-minded coach, that UCF has been pretty strong in that area throughout the years, throughout O'Leary's tenure. And I think Knights fans, there will be change, obviously. Bresnahan's going to look at it in a different way. There are going to be some new faces. There are some losses there. But you get the feeling that once you work through some of those changes, that will continue to be a strong suit for the Knights.
Yeah, you're not going to see USF's defense here.
You're
not going to see a whole new defense. You're going to see the same O'Leary defense, maybe with a couple of little changes, but nothing big is going to change there because we all know that George O'Leary is the head coach and he is a defensive coach and he runs the defense.
And I think fans will react as they are this evening to Bresnahan was fired by South Florida. Is this a guy that's washed up? And then you look, and this was a guy who was a linebacker at Navy, who coached in the NFL, defensive coordinator for the Oakland Raiders. Is this a washed-up guy at 54 years old, or is this a guy with a great deal of experience, and he now brings that to UCF?
I believe the latter there. Well, that leads us to a point where we need to hear from our sponsors. Let's do that, and then we're going to come out of that and have a little interview with Quincy McDuffie. So, you know what they say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. We don't need to know about your fun-filled weekend in the City of Sin, but we hope you'll click the ad on our website. It's right there to the left, the one that screams you have to save up to 50% off your next trip to Vegas. Just click on the ad and we promise never to talk about what happened in Vegas. All right, Night Nation, this is Andrew Phegley, and I have a very, very special guest with us today. It's Quincy McDuffie joining us by phone. Quincy, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, and yourself?
I'm doing great. Give us a little bit of a rundown of what you've been doing the last year or so.
Well, this past year, of course, as everyone knows, I have been in Hamilton, Canada, playing with the Hamilton Ticat and everything, pursuing my football career, making the best of it instead of chasing the dream. And, I came about with some little injuries that I overcame, and now I'm back healthy, looking to bounce back this year and make the best of this opportunity. I just recently signed this past season a 1-year deal with them, so I'm looking to take advantage of it and make things happen.
All right, congratulations on signing. So, what do you think about the style of play in the Canadian Football League? How does it differ a little bit for the people that don't know, and how do you like it?
I mean, there's rules. It's different. The field's bigger and wider. As opposed to having 11 defenders on both sides of the ball, you have an extra defender. And, you have the waggle to the line. It's different, but at the end of the day, you're still playing the game of football with just some rules that's kind of altered, but you're still competing and doing what you love, so I like it.
Yeah, does that wider field make it easier for you to return kickoffs and punts, or harder?
I mean, it's a wider field, but being that there's an extra defender on the field, it kind of like go hand in hand, so it makes up for that. And a lot of people look at it as if the field's wider, so always the speed guy, you can do the snap testing as if you're playing on a regular American field. The rules balance out, and like I said, extra defender being on the field, and with the rules that's up there, everything kind of balances way out.
Well, how did your experiences at UCF help you prepare for the pro game? Did it help quite a bit, especially with a guy that's so experienced like Coach O'Leary?
Well, of course it did. I learned a lot at college, and each and every day when I worked on my crafts and everything, and I just took it pretty much. They prepared me for that level, and when I got there, I was already accustomed to a lot that was being taught. It was an easy transition for me. You
had a lot of highlights. I was watching your highlight stuff earlier from your UCF days. What stands out the most that you accomplished at UCF?
I mean, I say what's standing out. I was mostly known for the return man. I have had a lot of success with that. And credit to my teammates for the tremendous blocking, because without them, I wouldn't have been able to make things happen that way. And,
Yeah, you had a great career there at UCF, and we miss you for sure. I do. I miss seeing number 14 out there doing crazy stuff. So you were a part of teams that paved the way for a lot of success the last couple of years for UCF. What's it like to follow UCF as a former player?
It's a great feeling. I mean, to actually witness some of my former teammates and the success that they have, and watch them go out there compete and win a conference championship, make it to a bowl game. I get a rest and I get positive feed off that. That motivates me, because it's good to know that they're doing well and to see them carrying out their dreams and making it happen still. You
had a kick return for a touchdown versus NC State a few years ago. What did you think about watching UCF play the Wolfpack in a bowl game this year? Were you able to see that?
I actually did. I seen bits and pieces of it. They did well. Like you said, it didn't turn out the way we liked, but at the end of the day, they still did a wonderful job, competed, and had one heck of a season.
All right, one more question. Rennell Hall, you played with him for a couple of years. He's known as Speedy, but you versus Hall in a 40-yard dash. Who wins that?
I said that'd be a great race for us both, being the fact that that's a shorter distance for me, so it'd be a great race.
Did you guys ever play around like that in practice? Racing and stuff?
We had at times. We, always out there competing and everything else. But the lineup and do the 40, I said that'd be a good one to see, a good one to watch.
Well, maybe we can make that happen one of these days. I don't know. Did you get to play in the Grey Cup this year? I know your team played in the Grey Cup. What was the experience like surrounding the Grey Cup this year?
I mean, it was great. The atmosphere, the fan support, that was like their Super Bowl up there, so it was a big deal. And just to be a part of it, I didn't actually play in the game, but I had the chance to witness my team go out, play, compete for that championship. It was a great feeling, but I was able to be a part and to witness it live. Wish everyone Happy New Year, and I hope you all make the best of it.
All right.
2015.
That works. Thank you so much, Quincy, and good luck. And hopefully we'll have you back on again after having more like special team player of the week and stuff like that up there. All right, we'll follow you.
No problem. I appreciate you having me.
Oh, no
and
problem.
I apologize about the phone and the connection.
It's all right, man. We will definitely follow you. Thank you so much.
All right, cool. Have a great one.
You too.
Andrew, as they say in the business, that's a good get. It's nice to have a former Knight player join the Knightline podcast. We talk, as we have the last few weeks, about Knights in the NFL. We probably should not ignore our Knights in the CFL, and we do have one Knight still standing, by the way. Josh Sitton and the Green Bay Packers advanced on to the NFC Championship game. But a great opportunity to hear from Quincy McDuffie.
Yeah, we're going to have Quincy back. early April or late May, I believe. They do, somewhere in there, they do their spring training and start their season up there. And I'm going to get back with him. We've talked quite a bit, and he'll definitely be back and talking with us. He's going to be our northern correspondent. Now that we have a Washington bureau, he's going to be our northern correspondent, so he'll definitely be back.
And there are people that are listening to the Knightline podcast all over the country, which is interesting because you see the stats that people are tuning in from everywhere, and they're liking us more and more on Facebook. A big jump in the likes this week. More and more people are following the Twitter feed, the Knightline podcast Twitter feed. People are tuning in on all sorts of platforms: YouTube, SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, TuneIn, and, of course, the ever-popular www.ucfknightlinepodcast.com. We, of course, want to hear from you. People are sharing their thoughts and comments and questions with us. Call in 407-205-7427. Leave us a question or a comment, and we'd like to include you in next week's Knightline podcast.
At UCF_Knightline on Twitter. You guys can tune into that every home game for UCF men's basketball, and I will be tweeting along the game, the score. If you're not around the TV and got your phone with you, it's a good way to keep up on the score and tidbits of information and who's leading and all that stuff. I do a lot of. It's called a Twitter storm, is what we've coined.
Is that your term for it, or is that a real term?
We have coined a Twitter storm. I don't know if it's a real term, but we have made it.
And
so.
You've gotten retweeted for your rants
and
ravings.
People retweet stuff all the time. That's kind of the thing. You're not as familiar with Twitter as the rest of us are, but we need to get you on the Twitter thing.
I read
more
it.
often.
I just don't.
You retweet
Twitter.
things that you like and that you want other people to hear, and then you favorite them and all that stuff. So yeah, we get lots of retweets and favorites, and I appreciate that for sure. We do need to talk a little bit about basketball here, though. Our UCF Knights played the SMU Mustangs today, and Trace, what do you have to say about that?
They fell to defeat to the Mustangs. Can we go back real quick, though? To me, the highlight of the basketball week was Brandon Goodwin firing a three at the end of regulation to force overtime at Houston, and firing another three to win the game at Houston. That, to me, was the highlight of the week. It was not the most recent game, but it was the most fun to watch.
Absolutely. That was crazy.
And not that I feel bad for Houston, but think about how Houston feels about us after losing to us on that strange play at the end of the football game.
Absolutely, that's true.
And then they lose in this fashion at home before what looked like dozens in Houston when you watched it on TV. Not a lot of people turning out for that game in Houston.
Absolutely. All right, so back to SMU here real quick. SMU today, the Knights lost 61-70. Really, to me, that could have been a lot worse. SMU is a very good team. That could have turned out way worse than it actually did. So I think we're sticking with these teams. I think that we're getting better. I do. So let's hear what Donnie Jones had to say about this. And then right after that, I'm going to play a clip from Larry Brown, who is a Hall of Fame coach, and he is the coach of the SMU Mustangs. And he had a lot of good things to say about UCF basketball that I think some of you will be surprised about.
Okay, well, it's a good basketball team tonight. Good basketball game. I thought new SMU coming in. I mean, this is a team preseason, top 25 in the country. Obviously, a terrific Hall of Fame coach in Larry Brown. We knew it would be a big challenge for us tonight, but I'm proud of how our guys fought for the most part in this game. Obviously, even finishing the game, our biggest thing is just continue to play every possession, regardless of what the score is. But I thought we put ourselves in position to have a chance. We had it to forward half and came back out in the second half and hung around there, keeping it under 10. I know they made a little run there, but when you're down 10 against SMU, you feel like you're down 30 with the way they play defense. But they're one of the best defensive teams we've seen this year, and obviously we needed some shots to go down from the three-point line to really open this thing up. And we had the opportunity with some kicks, but didn't go down tonight for our guards, which have been shooting the ball well, but. Give SMU some credit. I mean, they got great length, got great guard size, and they can frustrate you with their defensive intensity.
Donnie's got a young team. I've watched them a lot. They're getting better by the minute. I watched them play Temple. I watched them play Houston. They had a tough loss at Tulsa. I think they got a pretty good future. So, they got down against Houston. They don't give up. They got down against us. I think they keep playing. They got perimeter guys that can can handle it and stretch the defense. And McBride, when he gets better, I don't know how you guard him when he catches it. He got such a great feel. But I think they're going in the right direction. They got Antonio Davis's son sitting out, and that's family to me. So I think with the young people they have, and the future's pretty bright here.
All right, so there you have it. Larry Brown said it. It's going to be a bright future here for basketball. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but a bright future. Larry Brown said it right there.
Maybe not under Donnie Jones. Maybe Larry Brown will come here. Maybe Larry Brown will teach the young Knights some transitional defense.
Wouldn't that be awesome for Larry Brown to be the coach of the, I'm not going to go there. I like Donnie Jones, and I just hope that things come together here for UCF in the basketball area. One thing that was really good this year with UCF, women's flag football.
Women's flag football. We may not win basketball national championships. We may not win traditional football national championships. But boy, oh boy, can we dominate in flag football. Since 1979, Andrew, did you know this? Since 1979, UCF has won the most flag football titles of any school in the United States and Mexico, says the news release by Scott Morrow, Marketing and Communications Manager at the UCF Rec and Wellness Center. The UCF women's flag football team left no doubt in Pensacola, it reads. They defeat Florida A&M 7-6, successfully defending last year's national championship.
That's awesome.
That is pretty cool. Come on.
It is. Weren't we rugby national champions a couple
I think
years
we were,
ago as
and
well?
I think we were successful in
national
hockey.
championship cheerleaders. See, we've got national championships. They just not in football and basketball. Well, not, flag. Got them in flag football. All right.
Not yet.
We're getting there.
The other sports will catch up to flag football.
We're getting there. Thank you for that tidbit of information that was passed along to us. We appreciate it. And I think that this is going to come to the end of the UCF Knightline Podcast number 25.
Quite the show when you think about it.
Yeah.
So, reacting to some breaking news about Brashad Perryman going to the NFL draft, coaching changes, and flag football.
Yeah. So
we've got it all on the Knightline Podcast.
All right. We will be here next week. This is Andrew Phegley.
This is Trylko.
See you next week.
UCF charge onto the field. With our spirits we'll never yield. Black and gold charge right through the line. Victory is our cry. BSUTO alive tonight.